These diamond kids are quite magnificent at pairing with our fields and creating for us the things that we need. It means we have to stop the lineage patterns of I'm the parent, you're the child. Some of the things like you're supposed to be seen and not heard, to parenting forward, which is who are you, what do you need, and how can I create a platform for you.
Hello, and welcome to the Balanced and Blissful Energies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Hechavarria, and today my guest, Denise Dryden, is going to talk to us about the new frequency children, and actually we'll learn how it's not just new energy, but it's been with us for some time, and you may find yourself described amongst what we're going to be talking about here. So a little bit about Denise. Welcome, Denise.
I'm so happy to be here.
From a historian of the Renaissance and King Arthur legends, a teacher of young adults and intuitive, to a mother of 3 gifted children whose frequencies shifted her world, Denise Dryden has traveled a path of transformation few can claim. Guided by mystery schools and the ancient wisdom of the Kabbalah, she learned to read not just books, but the invisible threads of energy and timing woven through our lives. Her journey took her from building alternative education systems to coaching sensitive creatives, empaths, and starseeds, helping them and their families navigate a world that often feels out of sync with their souls. She is a sacred thread weaver and energetic translator, illuminating the unseen patterns that hold us back or propel us forward. Today, as a metaphysical strategist and energetic integration coach, Denise holds the frequency of truth with compassionate clarity, guiding others through the unknown with grace and strategy. Whether helping parents raise diamond children or leaders align with cosmic shifts, she is a beacon for those ready to step beyond fear into a deeper, more expansive way of being. And I can fully attest to that because I have worked with Denise. And Denise, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I first learned about you through a common contact, Kalina Molnar, and she mentioned to me, I see in you working with the frequency of children. And so what is this term? How can we best describe what we're talking about here?
Frequency is one of those complicated words to define, first of all, and then to see it in a human and describe it or help a parent understand it. It's a little mind-blowing. So let's break it down. A frequency is a way that we can measure a pulse or measure a way of measurement. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. And our heart has a certain pulse that it puts out, which in some languages can be Morse code like or very transmission based. So when we have humans that hold frequencies in them, they hold a frequency of, say, like with the Indigo, the truth and justice, which means that their pulse is always going to say, nah, that's not really true. Or, oh yeah, that's great. And it's felt by those around them. We can also shift the word frequency into light codes. So if you're used to thinking of codes, that we hold codes within us, or that we have a vibration or we have a frequency, then what we have is a intentionally seated human with a staircase step up of broadening and dismantling and opening the world up into a new future. And it was a brilliant plan to be able to bring it in through the form of the children, which is, reincarnation or incarnated beings are placed in highly dysfunctional families so that these frequencies can be felt and seen and impacted. And it's kind of like, who wants to sign up for that journey? And I think that's what we can also call a starseed.
Right. Yeah, that's what it
Mhm.
sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when did you recognize that you were working with frequency children, star seeds? Like, when did you first feel that in your life?
Okay, I'm a unique child. I'm extremely extroverted, ADHD, really athletic, eye-hand coordination, and I can see things. And I learned as a young child that when I saw things in the classroom and I said them out loud, I got in trouble a lot. And so there was always and I would look around and there weren't very many other children like me or teens like me or young adults like me or teachers or anything. So I realized that there's something very strange and unique and beautiful about the way that I work this world. And then when I had children, I had 3 kids in 5 years, and my first child is incredibly, aware, intuitive, and highly anxious, and has extreme levels of sensitivity. My second child, is very quiet and internal and almost turtles almost all the time and is extremely overwhelmed and very neurodiverse. So I'm like, I got an outward bound, outward directed, anxious kid, and I've got this internal one. And then I have a third child was incredibly intuitive, sensitive, and all fire. Like, I'm gonna argue with you. We're gonna go do this. I'm gonna jump off this cliff. And so, herding these three energies, I had to learn a lot about alternative approaches to medicine, to education, to parenting. So I became really proficient at parenting tools for these kinds of kids. And then I helped create an alternative K through 8 with, I think all told, there were 7 of us as adults, 3 teachers, 1 administrator, a therapist, counselor, and a couple parents. And we created this democratic school. And then it just sort of naturally led into working with teens and, well, late stage adolescents and young adults in a program in Bend, Oregon, where I lived, managing, helping manage young adults in an independent living program that were creative. College, high school, high school sort of maybe they made it through their college failure, drugs and alcohol, obstinate, oppositional, defiant, placed and sent to a program, what they called greyhounded. Kids from the East Coast were sent to programs on the West Coast so that they could never get home very easily. And I loved these kids because I was looking at other versions of me. Like, I would have been in a program if my parents knew about this. And so, yeah, I mean, I could recognize that the multidimensional intelligences, the empathic skills, the overwhelm, the way that they shut down when their parents came into town to do work with them. And so that just, I started to go, who are these kids? So I'm in the baby boomer generation, and I'm working almost exclusively with baby boomers, late
Yeah.
stage baby boomers, and these oppositional, defiant, almost breakfast club kind of kids. Every mixture you'd ever want to see of who they are, how they act out, where they shut down. And I started to work in admissions, bringing them into programs, and I went through a series of different programs and sort of held this kid's energy and said, "You're going to be okay here. This is where we're going to help you find your voice. This is where we're going to help you create tools that you can have boundaries with your parents. This is where we'll help you with language and clarity. This is where we will help you with self-knowledge." And from that, it was a natural step into coaching. So I became this sort of gatekeeper for a certain kind of kid. And then in 2005 to 2007, I noticed that the ones coming into programs were different. And they were quiet, and they did this turtling. They did this refusal. They smelled really bad because they never took showers. You couldn't get them to do anything about self-care or to desire to want to participate in school, or parents had to, bribe them with Starbucks drinks just to get them in the car, to get them to the airport, to come to the program. Like, it was so out of sync with the other kind of kids. So I went to a channel I know that I'd been working with, Araya, and started to say, what's the difference between these two? And that's where she started to teach me on the frequency seeding, and that this was a higher, different level of frequency. So
Wow.
if the indigo is the frequency of truth and justice, and the dismantlers, like the ones who can say no really easily and knock down programs, teachers, schools, parents, the crystalline child, the neurodiverse that started somewhere like the late 80s, 89, 90, they started to come in mass. They'd come in before that, of course, but they came in mass. They were the ones who just peacefully sat down and said, with love and unconditional love, I'm not doing that. You can't, no. And the parents were like, you have to. And the kid's like, no, I don't. And so that's where I started to work with each of these unique personalities and see.
So yeah, let's talk about these different types of frequencies that you identified through this channel, Aria, and I think later then you also worked with another channel, as you described it in your book. You mentioned already the indigo frequency and the holders of the truth and justice, and then what's the next frequency, and what were the years, and yeah, just go into that.
Yeah, of course. The crystal children, or the crystalline, or the there's way, I've heard them called crystals, I've heard them called crystalline energy. As I was saying before, they're unconditional love. They are simply what I would call the holders. So if we look at a garden, the indigos are the ones who come through and they're like, weed, 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 and they're just chopping things and dismantling and clearing the ground. And the crystal kids are the ones who kind of come in and go like, so here we are, and we're going to hold this vibration. And it's very deep and resonant. And I often compare them to the vibration of whales in whale language. They have magnificent intelligences and the ability to recall languages and vibrations from all over the galactics, but they don't even know it. So they're just kind of like, they self-medicate with video games. They tune out. They can't do traditional school very well at all, because it's either too loud, too fast, the bells are ringing, the expectations of what do I want to say, memorization and rote learning is not something that they're here to do. So it is almost as if, as loud and obnoxiously powerful as the indigo was, it was the crystal kid that started to change our entire world. So when you look at them coming in mass in 1989, then, at preschool at 3 years old, they started to say, what are we going to do with these kids? They won't take their cowboy boots off. They don't want to take their shoes off, and we take their shoes off and they put them back on. And then they go into kindergarten and they're like, they have no interest at all in learning the ABCs, but they can speak in full sentences and explain everything to you. So every year that they went through school, through now school, through college, through employment, into relationships, they're doing it very differently. So this is embedded within our millennial culture, right? And so our millennials are just, they're unique, and they have this characterization of the whiner, or the ones who need the medals, or the this or that. And it's more like parents would have done anything to try to motivate this child to participate in what they thought was normal. Please come play t-ball. Oh,
Yeah.
please play soccer. Please learn how to play the piano. And the kid would just look at him and go, what are you doing? And they would dangle, oh, you get a prize for, they tried every form of bribery that there is. And so this is how this vibration started moving, and it's the holder. And then the next one came, and it was a very short 5-year, 2002 to 2007. And it was just like for 5 years, this rainbow bridge kid came in. And the rainbow is like off all the spectrums of all the rays, of all the combination of frequencies, the peacemaker, or I like to liken them in the garden to the honeybee that goes from flower to flower and sort of doesn't go, oh, that's a purple flower, I shouldn't go over there. Or that they just are like, it's a flower. Why not? And so they cross religion, they cross education, they cross race, they cross gender, and they have this blending, the ability to blend and harmonize. And they were placed in, man, incredibly difficult leadership families. So think of political leaders, entertainment leaders, religious leaders, because, you know, when you get to that point as a CEO of a huge company or the deacon of a major church, or you have a voice, you've channeled it and you know what your message is. And then you have a child who comes and says, that's so limited, broaden it. And so the example I would use is, as a coach, I had this beautiful child, young man, who didn't want to go to college. He could play music. He played music since he was 4 years old, electronic, you know, all vibrational, and would play everywhere he went, was like a celebrity of this vibrational music. And his parents wanted him to go to an Ivy League school because that's where they went, and their family went, and their family went, and their family went. And he's like, why? I want to play music. And so what ensued was 2.5 years in a program that is usually a year long of a kid saying, I'm not going. I'm not even going to finish doing the things at this program that you want me to do because I'm not here to play music. And would you take a look at how angry you get with me when I say no? And so like this bridging of always just, let me introduce you to this. Let me try this. And these parents, their minds had such a hard time expanding to the level that these kids could take them. So then, you have these blenders. And so you think of the clearing of the ground, the planting of the seed, and the ability to blend and then hold. And somewhere in 2008 is when the beginning of the diamond children started to come, which is like think of the diamond with all of the facets. I have a stone here that just shimmers and it's multifaceted. It's highly intelligent. It is the intelligences and the galactic connections of the Aquarian age. And it took decades, centuries for Earth to be able to hold this frequency without the frequency stagnating or even choosing, not even I don't know. It's like it's stagnating, leaving, dying. Diamonds don't care whether the soil is good or bad. If they're like, yep, nope, don't want to be here, they just leave. So for decades we had stillbirths, and we had crib deaths, and we had early childhood accidents where the kids were like, we tried it, the vibration was not in sync with us, they couldn't hold us long enough, and now we're here. So 2008 was when they started to hold, and then we've had wave after wave after wave of different kinds of diamond kids coming in. Now Lee Carroll wrote a book on the Indigos in 80, it was in the 80s, or it was even, actually, 90s, no, it was in the early 2000s.
Or
99,
2000,
2000s.
Yeah.
And at that point, think about this, it was before it was before 2012. It
Mhm.
was before the shift. So every kid that was unique or different, every child that held some sort of empathic, psychic, vibrational uniqueness to it was called an indigo. And so the indigo term was refined with my work with Araya, and she gave me dates, or working with her, I was able to bring dates in and descriptions and work with her ascended masters. And I felt like I was going to school, Elizabeth. I'd have questions like, these are the characteristics I'm seeing within these oppositional defiant kids I'm seeing in these years. And they would come in very clear and introduce themselves and then say, we were going to ask you to please remove the labels, that your psychology labels or your educational labels or your behavioral labels are not working with these kids. And I'm like, yeah, but I got to go to where they're being labeled and then pull off. And they're like, we get that, but you need to stop with these labels. And I would define them, and then they would give me years. They would tell me what the rays were that they held, the vibrations. And so then I started, working on putting a book together with just the indigos. And I kept thinking I'm going to do 4 books on all 4 kids. And I've still never been able to stop working with the indigos. Because that's sort of the hardest part, is the dismantling, which we're seeing now in our culture.
Right. Yeah.
Everything that's falling apart right now started in the decision in the late 1950s to bring this seeding in, and to start with the indigos, who started dismantling everything slowly, bit by bit. And now we're seeing the collapse, and we're thinking, it can't just fall and it's been falling for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've been eroding at it for that long.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to step back a little bit, because to catch the audience up on what is this seating decision? Where is this coming from? And
You're gonna
yeah,
go
like,
there, okay.
right? Well,
Yeah.
why are we
Yep.
talking about this, right? I think it's important. We don't have to necessarily get into the conspiracies, but we're talking about an evolution of consciousness, a movement from where we were to some other way of being. And so, from your understanding, who are the beings who are, or even the people who, the souls who incarnated? How is this all being decided and evolving?
It's a great question, because we want to create the background, the
Right.
soil that actually happened. So within those of us who work on an energetic level, or can see the invisible, it can feel it and understand and work with it, what we recognize is that there seems to be some sort of an oppression, or some sort of a suppressed state over the human population. And for those who study exopolitics, or Galactic, or Star Wars, or Star Trek, Earth has been held by a nefarious or archon reptilian based belief system. And humans have been part of the fodder of that holding. We've been enslaved, our energy's been used, our education, our systems, our mental constructs have been shaped for us. And so there was this piece that kept going out into the galactics, which is Earth is a hands off until the humans can wake up and start to ask for what they need. And so that awakening, whether it happened at the after the world wars, whether it happened in the 60s with a youth that could see and feel, whether it happened with the assistance of drugs, psychedelics, that said, hey, wait a minute, I can see the cages around us, or I can whatever it is, we started to realize that there's some freedoms that need to happen, and there's a reach out. So whether it was the Great Convergence in 1987, whether it was the shift in 2012, the idea was that there's this desire within the human population to free themselves from this enslavement. That being told, what I talked about in the book was that there have been different contracts at different times in history where the archons have contracted and said, hey, we got this great technology. In exchange, let us work with your government, kind of like the bidding, and we'll give you this, and in exchange, we get that. And so in the 20s and 30s, there was a contract that existed between Germany, and Germany was given high tech and science and scientists and formulas that were so modern for our Earth and so old for the Galactics, but it was a bargaining tool. Now, when that system expanded and we could see how detrimental, how devastating it was to the human population and what started to happen before, during, and after World War II, there were negotiations that started within the American government under Eisenhower, and Eisenhower shut it down and said, no, we're not doing that. And the Majestic 12, the industrial complex, kind of bypassed him, forged his signature, said he did it. And at that point, there was this call out into the Galactics, which was, okay, we need a different program. There's no way to stop. There's no way to stop this archon control through diplomacy, through intervention in government systems, through the standard means that we thought we could do it. So we're going to go into plan B, or the bigger plan, which is we're going to put a seeded frequency. And the architecture of that was to bring it in through the human body as a frequency that naturally dismantles or naturally pulses out under the surface, under detection, in the innocence of children. Now, we know that architecture was long in the making, but it's really started to be implemented at the time when Eisenhower tried to shut down the archons, when there was a group of emissaries in our Washington, D.C., working with contact information, and that failed. So when that door shut, they started putting what we're going to call scouts, early teachers, early architects, early designers of this frequency onto the Earth so that they could be there later and teachers, grandparents, store owners, employees, whatever, employers. And then in the late 70s was the idea to bring them in mass. So this architecture was designed as a frequency implant, which is much more powerful than human contact and diplomacy. And it's invisible and non-detected. I was part of the architecture. I was part of the early arrivals, and I would call myself a scout, which is I'm here to sort of welcome them all when they come in, help people understand what they're doing, and move them along, sort of and they call me the den mother. When I was working with Araya, they were like, you're just the den mother down there, like, because I coach kids. Everywhere I go, I'm always working with adolescents and young adults. So that said, that there is this intentional seeded frequency. The call went out throughout the galactic. So if you've watched Deep Space Nine, or if you watched Star Trek, or you've watched Star Wars, you see that there's this interaction in the galactics all the time, and there's these competitions like or conflicts like there are here on Earth between some agendas for some planets or some galaxies versus the other. Very similar. They put a call out and said, we got this project for you. We want you to go down to Earth. We're going to put you into a really, really nasty, toxic family. You get to be like the only one in the whole family and figure out, and we're going to wipe your memory. And then you get to figure out how to just recognize this frequency that you hold and support it against all the odds. And every single warrior, every single healer, leader said, that's an easy project. I will do that. And remember, in Earth time, it's worse than dog years. It's like 2 months, 3 months. In the Galactics, it's like 80 years down here. And so you think it's so slow, it's so dense, and I signed up to do this. Why? And then we have to sort of go through the family structure, and then we have to go through the education system, and then we have to figure out how to make money to survive, and then we have to remember who we are while we're doing all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a volunteer mission where you held a frequency and you went into a family system to bust open the lineage, the toxicity, the control, and break it apart, one family, one human at a time.
And that's
Right.
true for the
Yeah.
indigo frequency, right? Or is it
That's
still
all of
true
them.
for those coming in now, like the diamonds, or do they require a higher, already a little bit more?
I'm thinking as I'm
Mm-hmm.
being quiet. Um, I would resist ranking any of the frequencies as one being higher or stronger or better than the other.
Right.
What I would say is that anytime that we start making changes, the front end, the boots on the ground, is the most warrior based, because warrior energy is needed. Then warriors, as they age, become less egotistical, less less needful to prove who they are, and much more diplomatic and much more accepting. So what we have is, you can almost see the age of the warriors in the frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, what did you say? I want to fight. I will slay you for that. And then you have the crystals, which is, I just sit back and listen and observe, because our job is to really observe and to learn what this earth policies are, and then to change them from within. And then the bridge is like, I have some suggestions. You can take them or leave them. Who am I? And then the diamond is just sort of the one who I look at as that ancient elder that looks at you with eyes like, oh, I see you. You're wonderful. I'm so excited you're here. What can we do together? And so there's wisdom that has been placed in these frequencies that is not ranked. It's easier for some.
Yeah.
Now, as you've experienced with the diamonds, our bodies have a hard time holding these frequencies. And there's symptoms and there's issues that have come up as a result of this.
Yeah. There are a lot of intolerances is a very big problem in children now. Allergies and, of course, the label of ADHD and all of that is still very big. But that's mostly due to our systems and what we're trying to require them to fit into, rather than who they really are. Or also that there's so much dissonance that they perceive in the family structure, and this is their way of moving the energy in the family. They're constantly moving. That's what I perceive. It's like they're just trying to transmute everything by constantly moving around. They can't sit still. Yeah.
It's so toxic. It's so heavy. They can't just sit in it.
Right. Yeah.
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 Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just looking through the transits, the planetary transits that are coming up over the next couple of years. And because I have one of those, micro-generational placements of Pluto in the early degrees of Libra, and well, Neptune is, and Saturn right now, but Neptune is sitting also in the early degrees of Libra. And we're you mentioned Uranus coming up into Gemini, and then we're going to start this cycle. I think it's about 3 years, starting from next month, where there's going to be this, they call it this minor grand trine, or great, whatever. I don't know the terminology so well, but actually for those of us with Pluto in Libra, it's going to be a kite formation. And this is a very powerful agent for change in a way that could be very, could have so much more flow than, say, something that's very, like oppositional. And so when I was seeing that, I was like, wow, this could be like a huge trigger event for waking up a lot of indigos if they're not already there. What do you think about this?
I agree with you. What we want to do is take the indigo energy and align it with the skill set as opposed to the pain or the trauma or the victim experiences. And all of the outer planets have been shifting into 1 degree.
Yeah.
And so when you have these big, powerful, wise planets, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, on the outside, and they all shift. So what we've been doing for the last year is year and a half is going through the 29 degrees, the anoretics, which is like, you've been in this sign for 15 years, you've been in this sign for 7 years, you've been in your sign for, and it's time to like bring it to a close. And we're kind of holding our energy and going like, wow, this has been once we realize what we've been through and what we've been taught in that sign for that sheer amount of time, it's about closing that and then stepping into the 1 degree, which is forming the trines, right? And the kite for those in Pluto.
Yeah.
In Libra, that makes a lot of sense. So what that is it's a call to who you are, what you're here for, and to use the truth that is inside your body, not from the outside. Now, this last Sunday, I brought to our attention that when Uranus drops over, it's right now it's in the last couple degrees of Taurus, drops in, because we're already in that phase, drops into Gemini. The beauty of it is that it's where what has been structured or taught to us, or what the narrative we've lived in, the cage, conflicts with the inner knower of our frequency, of our ability to trust our intuition, our inner wisdom. And that clash is the 7 years where we're going to shift. And this is the 7 years that I see that the indigo gets to go from, I've always thought this, but I've had to fight on this front and this front and this front, to what if I just say what I feel, say who I am, and close these relationships off that have made attempts to shut that down. So it's going to be a magnificent and very different year for all of these frequencies.
Yeah.
All of them.
Well, it's not just 1 year. It's like a series of years where it's continuing to happen, the same pattern. It's amazing. Like, it's not just going to be a like, oh, that little blip. And I'm like, oh, did you notice that? No, it's 3 years of the same kind of energy.
Yeah. It's going to be, and to be very clear, we've been in these years of extreme energy, for the last couple of decades. And so the reason that I wanted to bring up this Archonic reptilian control is that they know planets really well. They know what those frequencies do to impact us. We've been taught that astrology is woo-woo, and it's like, oh, you could go play and do. What they don't understand is no decisions are made without understanding how these master planets are supporting or working against. So when we understand that this is our time to shine, and everything's being plan to try to stop that. That was part of the history that I wanted to just put out there, because you've seen it as a practitioner, a medical practitioner on the front end, is that this frequency implant was, or implementation was anticipated. And because it was anticipated, it was like, well, how is this? What's the frequency connection? It's the pineal gland and it's the gut. It's the connection between the pineal gland and the gut, to me. And if we can attack those two separately or together, then we can inhibit the efficiency of that frequency. So what we've seen, and I sent you, a couple weeks, I guess it was a month ago, maybe more than a few weeks ago, a list of all the strategic implementations in the pharmaceutical industries and in the medical and in the food industries to implement foods, dyes, aluminums, fluoride into the system to shut down our receptors, which makes it hard for us to actually participate in the frequency or think that we're being effective. And we're dealing with health issues all the time, trying to hold this frequency. We're struggling to keep our bodies healthy while we are holding this frequency, or while this frequency is in place. We don't consciously know that we have a frequency. We couldn't feel it, name it.
Yeah.
It is just something that we watch others react to from the outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I'll ask myself often, where do I fit into this frequency? Do I have any of the characteristics? Some yes, some no. But it almost doesn't matter, because it matters, yes, in the whole mission aspect of it. But what really matters ultimately is that we are connecting with our true selves, with our soul. And once you have established that connection, whatever label you apply doesn't really matter, because you're just going to you're going to magnetize to you everyone and everything that you need in your life to do the thing that you came here to do, whether that be a whole a program that you're initiating or something that you're taking down or whatever, or whether you're just there to hold a particular frequency that everyone else can attune to and do their thing. And yeah, I think the astrological aspects are part of our, they're part of our little triggers. They're part of our little ways for us to come back and find that soul aspect, that higher self memory, because things are catalyzed through these energies in our lives. And if you're resisting a lot, and if you're living in a, really out of alignment, then the things that get catalyzed into your life to get you into alignment are going to be a little bit rougher, potentially. And then there are also situations where, I don't know, maybe you can comment on this as well, but it seems like there are also situations where there's just such misalignment and so much disease that the soul just chooses to exit.
Mm-hmm. I agree. One of the pieces that I include each week, I do a weekly YouTube sort of like, this is what I'm seeing. What are you guys seeing out there? And we talk, I present constructs and concepts. I keep saying we have to be prepared that a lot of people will leave. A lot of people cannot hold, whether it's seeing something that makes them feel secure or happy, or something that they're very attached to, or something that they didn't have the internal intrinsic guidance to break out of, becoming bigger and bigger, and their choices to just leave, to tap out. And we have to allow that to say, hey, we did this, we came in, we did the mission for as long as we could, and it's okay to leave. Not encouraging it, but to not grieve it as such a horrendous thing. There's even the possibility that some people will choose to leave. And the way that I had started to use an example before we were cut off, so I'll continue with that, which is you go to a megaplex to watch a movie, and your friend talks you into going and seeing something. You're like, I don't know, I want to do that. It's a horror movie or it's something, or you don't like the actor or whatever. You get in there and you sit down, in 10 minutes in the movie, you're like, nope, not going to spend the next 2 hours sitting in here for this. So you get up, take your popcorn, and you go find another movie theater, and you go into that one and watch the rest of the other movie. Because you have the ability to pick and choose. And so we get to decide how long we want to be here. And it doesn't matter what we do for a living, or who we're partnered with, or what how we spend our free time. Our frequency is what needs to be clean and clear. So it's really challenging to introduce this idea of a frequency, number one, because it really blows most people's minds. The second thing is, how do you keep your pineal gland free and open? And how do you use diet and nutrition and breath work and get this whole physical body organ to work as a support system? And all of that is so slow and so difficult to do with the average human. Is to get them to take care of themselves, because they have a very valuable reason for being here.
It's the struggle that most doctors face, because there are so many, may I say, the majority of illnesses, at least in adults, are lifestyle related, and and thoughts and emotions related. And I remember when I was, doing the rotations through medicine, talking to people about what they could do to improve their health. And it's like, and honestly, I understand why doctors resort to the prescription pad so easily, or at least because we've been conditioned to it, because there has been for so long such a resistance to changing anything in your life. And that resistance is changing now, because COVID did something to people. It, like, the whole experience, not the virus, the whole experience did a lot to people. And now I get, much different attitudes about diet from parents, about environment, what are they listening to, what are they watching, etc., than before. But it's still an uphill battle, especially with children and screen time, video games, and what's coming next. Because the video games are getting more and more addictive. And now, like virtual reality is going to get more and more realistic, and it's an uphill battle.
It is a field that we have a choice of staying in, entering into, staying in, maintaining, or leaving. And the challenge that I have as a coach, as a mother, as a human being doing my own work, is that I like to be a little competitive. I'm really good at cards. I'm really good at challenges. I'm a great problem solver. And so, like, give me someone or give me something I can't do, or tell me I can't do something. And there's a fire and a playfulness that comes up, which is like, well, what if I don't do it that way? Or what if I do it this way? And so that alternative path, the ability to desire an alternative path, or to play with it and to create it, or to recognize that you have that freedom to do that is really where the external controls and the manipulation and the programming it has been targeted to, which is to keep you satiated and asleep in a non-performing life. And that is really hard to rock someone out of. Like it is very hard to rock someone out of addiction when they can't when they vehemently defend that they are not in addiction.
Right.
It's really hard. And
Yeah.
so all I can do, all each of us can do is manage our own field, our own body well, and watch for the people who kind of look at you and go, "Oh, what are you doing? How are you doing that? Can you talk to me about this?" Because trying to wake up everybody else is really hard.
Yeah.
So I look for the sparkle in the eye. I look for the attention. I look for the lean in. And there are times that it's really lonely. It's really quiet. There isn't a lot of there are a lot of eyeballs who go, "Wow, can you see how she shines? Can you see that?" And or the kids will say that, and the parent will be like, "Come on over here, get away from her." And you see this energy exchange, and where the dulling, where the lack of motivation, where the fear has been laid in over it. So we have our work cut out for us with a huge number of the population that doesn't know how to motivate to change. Those of us who are on the cutting edge or the front end of it, that's not a problem. We're already breaking away from old jobs. We're already, ending relationships that were not success or didn't work for us. We're already on a path of healing our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's courage. And it takes courage, and it takes internal strength and willpower.
Yeah.
It takes our Mars to just really access it and go for it. But my lens is never going to be the normal one because I've got an Aries South Node. I am a lifelong warrior and planner and strategist, and it's kind of like, oh, I got the game down now. Now we're going to play it this way.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to be a warrior and to talk to people who don't have that warrior energy or can't remember it.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back and loop back to the frequency kids that are coming in now and have been maybe since 2007, 2008, I think you said.
Mm-hmm.
What are they like? What did you learn about them from Aria or the other channel I forgot the name of? So what can we expect? As parents, what do we have to help them with, and what are they bringing?
They're like little Buddhas. They would be the diamond frequency. So we still have indigos coming. We still have crystals, and we are now very well systematized in the arrival of diamonds. I think COVID in the lockdown created a baby boom of a certain kind of diamond in such a beautiful way. It's like this procreation has to happen so these diamonds can get here. The diamond, it's multifaceted. It holds all of the rays in its purity. As I said, I call them the little Buddhas, or the ones who you look in their eyes and they are just absolutely present, and they're also sort of masked, and this is the world I live in. So what we want to do is we want to see them and acknowledge that you're one of those. And then there's this reverie. There's this honoring, which is, what do you need? Because they can talk telepathically to you. Their language is not restricted to human sounds, so you can work with various sounds, languaging that is outside the box, like when my 2.5-year-old, she's now 4.5, but when she was 2.5, she didn't have a lot of language skills to tell me what she wanted. So we started to make up sounds, but use the inflections of them based on what she needed. So I would cluck like a chicken, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," and we would go loud or we would go quiet, and we could talk in the car together by clucking like chickens, but we couldn't share the language until she could get that. They have very little interest in doing human things the way humans have always done it. So if you want eye-hand coordination, or you want to teach letters or painting in a certain way, or the rules of you have to eat your vegetables and your meats first and then you have dessert, like any of these sequences that humans have been taught to do, they look at you and go, no, why? If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. If I like it, I'm going to eat more. If I don't like it, I'm not. And so you're in that position as a parent and a caregiver of having to differentiate between an entitled and overindulged child or a wise one who's trying to tell you what they need. And you have to know what the lens is between the two, because they can look similar from the outside until you go in energetically and realize this is what they need at this time. Because they're here to teach us where we're going. So they're not going to reach back and learn what we know to make us happy. They're going to take us out of our comfort zone and they're going to show us what we would call the Aquarian age, the age of enlightenment, the new world. And that means that they're very proficient. Like she's at 4.5, and at 3, she could totally turn my phone on, take pictures, and delete it. And I was like, "Oh, shoot." Her technology skills are off the chart. Her ability to move her hands are very different than I've seen in children her age. And then I see other children, because they come and find me at the grocery store. They find me at the beach. They find me in a music venue. And what they bring or what they can communicate. And I'm not very good at telepathic communication, but I am good at reading energy. Now, those who can communicate telepathically, that's what you want to do as a mother, as a father, is start to ask them questions. What do you need? What do you want me to do?
Yeah. Well, the telepathy thing has come up recently with the telepathy tapes and the mothers mostly, but not just mothers, of autistic, nonverbal autistic children who can communicate with usually it's one family member that they're very bonded with, and they communicate telepathically. But they can also communicate with each other telepathically as well. Like the autistic children can communicate with each other telepathically as well. And yeah, there's so much that we don't know about that world and about what's going on in their lives and in their consciousness. It's like, the way I see it, it's a different level of consciousness that they're operating at, and we're getting introduced to it now.
Absolutely. So when I say it's important to ask them, it would be as if you had a honored guest at your home and you said, what would you like to eat? Or what does your body need to eat? Or is this a town you want to live in? Is this the lifestyle that you need? And we as parents are not used to giving children that kind of power. We're like, this is what we're going to do, and you get to follow. And these diamond kids are quite magnificent at pairing with our fields and creating for us the things that we need. So an example would be, I have a mother who had a young, somewhat verbally challenged little boy who kept going to the window and pointing to this house across the street and saying, house. And he never could say anything else, just house, my house, house, house. And they were renting, and she finally said, figured out that he needed her to go talk to the people at that house. So she went over to the house and talked to him, and they said, yeah, we had it on the market for like a year ago, and we took it off, and we still want to leave. And she's like, we want your house. And this is where he wanted to live, because it had a tree in the backyard, and he liked to, so then the financing, everything just fell into place effortless. So what we can say is they might even be magicians at energetically creating what we need if we allow them to show us what they can do. Means we have to stop the lineage patterns of I'm the parent, you're the child. Some of the things like you're supposed to be seen and not heard, to parenting forward, which is who are you, what do you need, and how can I create a platform for you to go do that.
It's a
sometimes
big
in coaching parents with diamond children, we have to make some decisions, like one of you has to quit your job because we need more time at home, and this child care scenario isn't working, or this it isn't working. Then it's like, no, we need the income. No, we have the house. No, we have the lifestyle. No, we have, and it's like, and that's where this battle has always come up with these frequency kids, whether it's the indigo, which is stop picking fights with everybody who's out of integrity, to the crystal, which is, I don't care if you don't like the school of the teachers, that's where we live and that's where you have to go, to the rainbows, which is, I can't support your vision, it's very different than what I perceive the reality of the world to be, to the diamond, which is, how do I listen to you and let you lead me as an infant, toddler, child, without these overindulgent behaviors that are so systematic of our culture.
Yeah, that's the challenge. That's the big challenge, because I see that too, right? The complete so much it is overindulgence. It's giving up so much of the parental decision making to the child, that the child feels very insecure because there are no boundaries. There's no safety boundaries. Like where, right? Like that's also, I think, a risk in the letting the child lead. Like there has to be a balance where we have to connect with the child in a very heart-centered way, to be able to discern what is it that you're telling me that is a true need versus a whim, a want of a child that has too many choices. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's loop back to the astrology and the kite and the outer planets in these trines. It means that we as adults have to align impeccably with who we know ourselves to be, and that is our most important challenge, is to remove the layers and get down to who we know ourselves to be, so that we can then have honest conversations, real conversations with our children about what they need. Because if there's layers on either end, it gets distorted.
On that note, Denise, thank you so much. This has been a really deep conversation into a topic that not a lot of people have awareness of. And I hope that it reaches all those who need to hear it, especially parents who may be struggling with behaviors or ways that their children are that don't make a lot of sense to what they're used to from other maybe even siblings, but just what other parents may be going through. And so if this is something that you want to learn more about, Denise, how can they get in touch with you? You can tell us about your book as well. And yeah, I'll give a plug as well for myself because I am open to working as well with families and children. And my website is also in the description box below.
Excellent. Well, I think the most important thing as we bring this to a close is we look at perspective. Because if we're stuck in one approach, we just hit it dead ends. So having a coach, someone who works on an energetic level, someone who can channel, and you and I can have both of these skill sets, right? Or all of these skill sets. Having someone bring in a new perspective, it gives us another whole place to put our attention. So I would encourage you to, if not one of us, find somebody that can help, give you a different lens of what's going on. I have two things. I wrote the very first book, which is it's what we call a field transmission. When you're reading it, you can feel it. It brings something up in you. It's called the Indigo Assignment. It's on Amazon. And there's links on my website to that. And my website is simply DeniseDryden.com. So anytime you want to get a hold of me or you want to get on my subscription list, or get over to my YouTube videos, which I do every Sunday, again, under Denise Dryden. So pretty easy to find, thank goodness. And I would love to hear from you if there's anything that I can do to assist you. And
Wonderful.
my gosh, Elizabeth, tell them what you do. Really tell them what you do.
Yes. Well, I work intuitively. I also channel energy, I clear energy, and I've been working with adults in this way. And now I'm also, because my background is in pediatrics and pediatric gastroenterology, I want to work with children as well, children and their parents. Doesn't have to be both parents on at the same time, but at least one that feels very strong connection with the child is usually the most important. So that information will be available. It's better to just look at the description box because my name is long. I'm not going to spell it out here. So thank you so much, Denise. And to the audience, if you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe and give it a like, share the information, share the podcast. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Denise.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It
All
was
right.
wonderful.
Thanks.